Your ideas help move this country. You are the American Innovator.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the American Innovator. This week's guest is Jerry Bussell. He is a lean expert and he just wrote a book called Anatomy of a Lean Leader. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, Jerry, because I know that you have been inspired by one of the same leaders that I've been inspired by, and that is Abraham Lincoln. And you wrote a book about leadership, and it's powerful how you arrived at writing this book. So I want to start off by just telling the story of how you decided to write this book, because it's interesting. So go ahead.
Well, I mean, first of all, I spent a 40-year career working and growing and developing as a leader. I think one of the responsibilities we have is to share with other leaders what we've learned along the journey. And as part of my leadership development, I took a trip over to Japan to learn more about how continuous improvement was being implemented and really to study the leaders in Japan at companies like Toyota and Honda. Right. And one thing that struck me was that these leaders were very different than many of the leaders that I had encountered in American business. And there were different qualities, the way they treated people, the way they showed respect for people, the way they coached and taught and asked questions. And so when I was flying back home over the Pacific, it dawned on me that it reminded me of a book I had read many years earlier called Lincoln on Leadership. And so as soon as I got home, I picked up that paperback and I went through it, and I was totally astonished to see the close similarities between the character traits of the leaders that I had observed at Toyota and Honda and other top Japanese companies, and Abraham Lincoln, who is such an exceptional leader, and I feel his leadership traits and qualities are just timeless.
Yeah, it's amazing how there are such a thing as timeless attributes, that we don't need to reinvent the wheel, that throughout history we've seen these stellar characteristics occur in great leadership. All we have to do is be a student of history, as I'm sure you are, and you uncovered and rediscovered those traits. So what are the traits? I know you have like 10 of them. Let's go over the top 3.
Well, the 3 that I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, they happen to all start with the letter P. That's not by
there we go.
It's by coincidence. But the first one is purpose.
Okay.
And the second one I want to talk to you a little bit about is it's an arcane word, but it's called probity. And I can get into that a little bit later. And the following, the one that's at the heart of continuous improvement, is problem solving.
Right.
Because that's how you improve everything, by solving problems.
So what was Lincoln's purpose, and how does that fall into the category of being a great lean leader or a successful green leader? Lean, well, not green, lean.
I can from whether it's a lean leader or a leader, I think purpose is so essential. And when I look at Lincoln, he was his constancy of purpose was there. He had one purpose, and that was to preserve the Union. He said, if slavery isn't a sin, nothing's a sin. And he knew that, he abhorred slavery, but he knew the number one thing he had to do was preserve the Union. So that drove all of his actions. That's what motivated him. And that drove the way he approached things in terms of making his decisions and how he tried to galvanize certain groups within the country. When I think about purpose in my own personal career, I've been very fortunate. I've worked with companies, for companies that have really strong purposes. I worked for Medtronic, where, in a nutshell, their purpose was to alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life.
Right.
Every 4 seconds, somebody's alive or living a better life. Well, if you go into work every day and you have that purpose, much like Lincoln had his purpose to preserve the Union, it really is your inspiration, your motivation, and it makes you want to do things as best you possibly can.
Well, it keeps you focused, I think, is the big thing. I think because Lincoln was so focused on one thing. Now, Jerry, I got to ask you the question, because I just saw, I'm a big Lincoln fan. I just saw the movie Lincoln, which was fantastic. I'm reading the book Killing Lincoln, and our entire company is going through the book Killing Lincoln right now in our morning meeting studying history. I've read Rivalry of Peers, where Abraham Lincoln surrounded himself.
Team of Rivals, yes.
Excuse me, what was the name of it?
Team of Rivals.
Team of Rivals, excuse me, thank you. And the question is, he was also equally as obsessed with the abolition or abolishment of slavery And was that a secondary purpose? Because you said his main purpose was to restore and
to preserve the Union, really. I mean,
right.
well, if he wasn't successful in preserving the Union, everything else would be for naught.
Right.
So his number one thing he had to do was preserve the Union, and in preserving, once he had that settled, and he knew that he could push it over the top by the Emancipation Proclamation, that's when he was really able to get after. Because he was really being driven by the abolitionists, and he was being attacked on both sides. The abolitionists weren't saying he was going fast enough. And one of the things that I learned from Toyota is watching everything is about timing. You do things at the right time. You don't do things prematurely. And Toyota has that patience, and that's what Lincoln had. He knew what his purpose was, and he had the patience to stay the course and select the correct time to introduce the Emancipation Proclamation, knowing that that was essential for him to really, I would say, fulfill what our founding fathers laid out in terms of Declaration of Independence.
Now, I know the purpose is not a study in history necessarily of your book, but I'm a history guy. So it seemed to me, from my observation, that Lincoln clearly understood that it was slavery at its root that was tearing apart the Union, and that's why slavery was the focus in terms of the abolition of slavery was so important. Or would you read that differently?
No, I agree with you there. If I can come back to purpose, I guess one of the other examples I use of purpose, and I'm associated with them, so it's a bit of a disclaimer, but I work with Underwriters Labs as an advisor, and I had asked the CEO, Keith Williams, to share the company's purpose there, which is to make the world a safer place.
Right.
And I know in traveling through that company, people are so motivated and committed because they're very clear on what their purpose is and why they come to work every day. So I really think as a leader, it all starts with purpose. That's the what.
And
the other character traits that we go through are how.
Yeah, but two things, Jerry, on purpose. Number one is, I think, in my mind, you have to have somewhat of a simple purpose in that it needs to be understood by everybody, so it isn't a convoluted purpose. It seemed to be clear. That's what Lincoln did. That's what Underwriters Laboratory did. That's what Toyota does, correct? And they don't have like 30 different purposes. They have one or two, and they focus intensely on that. Or am I misreading that?
No, it's correct. And the purpose doesn't change. I mean, if it's the right purpose and that's why you're in business. I mean, people don't get excited when you tell them, hey, listen, we're going to have a really successful year and we're going to make tons of money. Well, yes, from a financial standpoint, they want the company to be successful, but they want something much bigger that they can put their arms around. And to your point, Paul, you're exactly right. So many companies come out and they put these missions and these really long statements. Nobody can remember them, and they're always adding to it. And I think if you can make it really simple so people know what it is and it rolls right off their tongues, they can live it every day.
Yeah, it makes a gigantic difference. So I get the whole purpose thing completely. Okay, next.
Yeah, well, I use the word probity, and it's kind of an arcane word, but what it really means is complete honesty. And I think if you're going to have anybody follow you as a leader, it starts off with integrity, telling the truth to yourself, and then honesty, telling the truth to everybody else. Well, if you can't face the brutal reality of some areas that you need to get better at or you don't like about yourself, if you don't address that and deal with that candidly, it's very difficult to be consistent and be honest with people. And what people really want from leaders is somebody they can trust and who is honest.
Right. So here's the question. How was Lincoln honest? How was Toyota honest? What did you see in Toyota and Honda that you saw also in Lincoln? What are the applications of that honesty in their leadership?
Well, if I take Lincoln, I mean, he was very consistent. People could attack him for a number of things, but he was very consistent in what he said. When the writ of habeas corpus, when he dealt with that, he just said, I'm going to do anything I can to preserve this country. And, if I have to trample on the Constitution, I'm going to do it. I have a much bigger purpose. but he was consistent and honest. People attacked him up and down for so many different things.
Right.
But the one thing they could never get him on was his honesty. And that's why he was able to develop such strong relationships with some of his rivals.
Because
like
people trusted him.
They trusted him. And people are not going to trust you. And that's the heart of being a successful leader. They're not going to trust you if they don't think you have integrity, that you're honest with yourself and you're being consistently honest with them. If people trust you, they'll give you your heart, they'll give you your hands, they'll do anything for you.
So talk to me about Toyota.
That's been my experience.
So how did you see Toyota being honest? How did you see Honda being honest?
Well, some example, I think the best example of Toyota is just the overall respect for people. Their whole saying, if the learner hasn't learned, the teacher hasn't taught. They didn't believe in firing people. It was really, we've got to work with this person. We obviously haven't done a good enough job. So they didn't point blame at people. And they said, fine, if you see a problem or if you don't get something, we're going to continue to coach you and we're going to help you. Right. We're not going to berate you. So I think that builds a real trust when people don't have to have a fear of somebody pointing a finger out and said, who did that? Who made that mistake?
Right.
And I saw that as the way that they did things. I also said, from a standpoint of trust, what I saw at Honda and Toyota and Kubota and some of the companies there is they wouldn't tell people what to do. They would ask them questions. They tried to understand first.
Amazing.
And by doing that, they were able to build a trust with the people because they weren't coming in and prejudging the people or prejudging the situation.
Nice.
And that really spread the trust through the organization that they were going to stay the course and do the right thing.
Excellent, excellent. I love it. I didn't know.
I have one story along that line, if I could, Paul.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
One that I'd like to share, I worked prior to Medtronic, working for Medtronic, I worked for a company called Zoma that got acquired. And my quick story was we had a problem we were molding PVC and we had fumes and we were concerned it's a carcinogen, and I was really concerned that how are we going to do this? And at the time, the company just didn't have the money. It was way before them going public and Medtronic acquiring it. And I remember going up to my boss, the COO, and the CEO happened to be in the same room. And I said to him, I've got this problem. I know we don't have the money. And they both looked at me at the same time, and it almost came out of their mouths. Is it the right thing to do? And I said, yeah, we always do the right thing. We'll write your personal check. Don't ever hesitate. And to me, that level of honesty, that's what built the trust amongst myself and the other people in our organization. And Jim Treese was the CEO that I'm talking about.
Yeah, that supercharges the people who work for you when they know they can rely on you at that level. Is it the right thing to do? Then we're going to do it.
Correct.
Wow.
And that's something that that story spread through the company. And nobody ever hesitated when they saw something wrong, even if it was going to cost money or do something. They knew they could come forward and be frank and honest and candid in terms of the situation.
So we've got purpose, we've got probity, which is actually honesty. And I do have to ask you a question. You made a comment about Kubota. Kubota makes a phenomenal product. I own a lot of Kubota products. I have a Kubota tractor. I have a Kubota four-wheel drive. I wasn't aware. Are they a lean company?
Oh, they have been for many years. And I think the thing that is really amazing when you go to the company is that the plant was built in the 1930s and you could eat off the floors. And the other thing that was so impressive was how, I want to say, simple and elegant everything they did. I mean, there was the changeovers on equipment, the way they had the teams measuring very simple problems, the way they actually just moved product through the facility. It didn't have to be a brand new plant. It was a plant that it was constantly changing, and the level of engagement that I saw at Kubota was just really phenomenal.
Well, I've been to Japan many times. I have not been to Kubota, and that excites me because I love their products. I'm about ready to buy a Kubota excavator, and that makes me happy to hear they're that good at lean.
And they're applying in the new product development area, so that's
Yeah.
some area you might want to try to get in there and take
Oh
a look, because
yeah.
that's right in your sweet
Well,
spot.
well, the funny thing is, they're the only ones in the market that have this new excavator with a blade that goes 6 directions. It goes up and down, goes this way, back and forth, and it tilts. So when you're grading, you can grade the exact slope. I mean, it saves so much time. Such a lean innovation, and nobody else has it. So that's a very cool
Well,
thing.
it's designed based on really the need of the
Yeah.
customer or the user,
Shop
right?
floor, right? All the time. That's the way lean always worked. Okay, purpose, probity, and
Yeah, problem solving,
yeah.
and I think we were talking a little bit earlier before we went on about this. It's really at the heart of continuous improvement,
Mhm.
because we're constantly trying to solve problems. We have a target condition that we want to achieve, and
Right.
we've got a gap, and we're always trying to close that gap by putting the right countermeasures in place, creating standard work and making that the basis, but then going in and trying to see where we have abnormal conditions versus normal and trying to solve those problems.
So,
Not,
so how did Lincoln solve problems? How do you see Lincoln apply
well,
that, and
you
how does
know,
Toyota and Kubota apply that?
I look at Lincoln, and it was interesting. I'll tell you this quick story. James McPherson, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner and a great Lincoln scholar, he wrote The Battle Cry of Freedom, but he wrote so many books about Lincoln.
Hmm.
And he was doing a video, an interview out at Berkeley. And he had just written a book on Lincoln as commander in chief, tried by war,
Hmm.
and talked about how Lincoln had created all of these different positions and how he handled strategy. But he said the thing that was really the X factor or the secret weapon
Hmm.
was Lincoln's problem solving abilities.
Hmm.
And what Lincoln had was this incredible ability to go and look at anything objectively. Quite frankly, he wouldn't trust other people to look at things because he thought that they would bring their emotions into it.
So he was
And
a
what he
shop
was
floor
able to
guy.
do is look at, it's almost like Dragnet,
Yeah.
just the facts, ma'am, please. And that's
Yeah.
what Lincoln did. And there were a couple of people when he had to go out into the battlefield where he wasn't able to go, that he could trust, that he felt had honed a similar skill set. And that's what separated him, because he could look at problems unemotionally, objectively, and then analyze it, get the input from other people, and solve it. And isn't that what we're trying to do in continuous improvement?
You know, it's so funny when you say that, because I just saw Lincoln, the movie, just about 2 days ago, and the opening scene was him sitting on a box at the war, right at the front lines, with some surrounded by soldiers from the Union that were asking him questions. And I thought, how interesting. He was always on the shop floor. He was at City Point. He was on the battleship destroyer when he went up the river to Richmond. He was always right there, making sure his information was good so he could solve problems effectively. It wasn't secondhand information that was being fed to him.
Yeah, and that's what he didn't want to see things filtered. And I think that's what I tried to do as a leader. I probably spent more time, at the end there were 7 facilities that where I worked for those people. I
Right.
learned that from Toyota. They didn't work for me. 1,000 people, I served them.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt Lincoln was doing by going out into the battlefield, showing people, showing the forces that he was there to serve them. And as a leader, the best way to really learn what's going on is to interact with the people. So
Right.
I probably spent 65% of my time at least going between the facilities and actually participating in Kaizens and events to lead by example and to try to encourage people to learn how to solve problems. And I saw the same thing in Toyota. I mean, I don't know how many thousands of times they pull that andiron cord, but they teach people to stop. If something isn't right, we're going to go solve that problem. Now,
I
over
love it.
60 years, they've honed those skills, and they really use PDCA, or others may use DMAIC,
Right.
but they're able to use that scientific method. And that's what I saw in Lincoln.
And that was
That's
just so our
I,
listeners. So that was plan, do, check, analyze, right? Adjust,
act,
act,
plan
right?
to check act.
Okay.
And then, or other people use the 5-step, which is, again, it's the same stuff, but it's what Six Sigma really promoted, was the DMAIC, measure, analyze, define, measure,
let me
analyze,
back up.
improve, and control.
I think what I'm hearing you say is these attributes of a lean leader, which you saw in Lincoln and you saw in Toyota, is obviously they had purpose, they had probity, which was honesty, and they had the ability to problem solve. So the way in which they solve problems, which you've discovered in your long leadership career, is critical to successful leadership, successful lean leadership. Toyota has a great visual of it, the andon cord, products going through, cars being made, there's a problem, boom, they shut the whole plant down and people come running, because solving problems is not something you put off, you do it now, right?
Yeah, and for example, I'll give you on the problem solving. I use the example of Sheriff John Rutherford from Jacksonville.
Yeah, great guy.
And I know you know him.
I've interviewed him.
He had a problem. There's a couple of different. He had a problem where they were going to have to build another jail because they were out of space.
Right.
And what he said, well, we can't spend $31 million. So what he did was go and have people go and see, and he participated, got involved in it, and they found a way to reconfigure things where they spent less than $150,000, had prisoners actually built the reconfiguration of the cots in the cells, and they solved a major problem. And when you think of just investing and thinking deeply about something, it's the whole Toyota thing. You wring the towel when it's dry, you wring it some more. You constantly try to find ways to do things without spending money and solve problems. Yeah,
so I like your point. You've made a good point. I've heard that said before. Lean is simply wringing water out of a dry towel. Is that the expression?
It really is. And I think the biggest thing that in problem solving is not to go into anything with any assumptions.
Right.
Try to look at it look at it anew, like Lincoln would say, for the very first time, like you've never seen it before. And that's why in a lot of problem solving exercises, it's always great to bring people in that know nothing about the area because they don't have any biases and they ask the best questions.
It's interesting. We just hired, Jerry, we just hired a new girl. I got to tell you a story because it dovetails perfectly. Hired a new girl, Michelle. She comes in, she's doing the packaging on our product. She says, why are we doing this? We're putting 4 labels on. I'm learning about lean from you guys. I've been here 2 weeks. 4 labels. We only need 2. The labels are redundant. Why are we doing this? Now, we've been doing this for years this way, right? Fresh eyes, new people bringing it. And we said, well, Michelle, we do it because of this, this, this. None of them were good reasons. We found out we could package the whole thing much more effectively with 2 labels instead of 4 because we had fresh eyes. Interesting.
Yeah, and so finally around the problem solving, I think the whole thing is that it's a great opportunity to grow and develop people. I know John Shook really helped to promote the A3 form, which contains the scientific method. But that is a tremendous opportunity to teach people. And there's no greater way to show respect for people and engage people by teaching them how to solve problems so that they'll own the problem and that they'll have the skill. I'd much rather be in an organization if there was 1,000 people. I don't want 20 or 30 or 50 people that are improving or solving problems. I want everyone, everywhere, every day to come from a phrase of a friend of mine, Bruce Hamilton, to solve problems, because there is just so much there, and you want to use everybody, leverage everybody in the organization.
There's power there. Jerry, do you have your book there right in front of you?
Yeah, sure do.
Hold it up to the screen so we can see it. Because you haven't sent me a copy yet, Jerry. Come on, man. You're holding out on me. All right.
Yeah,
that looks
we'll
awesome.
get you one there.
So Anatomy of a Lean Leader by Jerry Bussell. And that's the interview we've been listening to. Jerry, thank you very much. A great job. I'm inspired because you gave me 3 simple things that I could never forget. I can never forget the idea that we must have purpose, probity, honesty, and we also must be able to be incredible problem solvers in a methodology to teach and show our people how to solve problems. And I thought the most interesting thing you said, although all of it was interesting, is that they always ask questions. They don't give the answers, they ask questions to let their people develop how it is that we should problem solve. And that's a powerful concept.
Well, thanks a lot, Paul. I appreciate you having me on, and I wish you and your family a very happy and joyous holiday season.
Oh, absolutely. Merry Christmas to everyone out there, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, Jerry. We can get the book, obviously, on Amazon, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's been out now for about 6 weeks.
Good. The most important thing, though, Jerry, is did you do an audio for people like me who do audiobooks?
we're going to work on that. That's on the list, you know.
Okay.
So first things first was to get the book out.
Okay, snap to it, man. There's a whole bunch of people like me that love audiobooks.
Okay, we'll have to go there. That is on the list. Thanks, Paul.
And that's shop floor stuff. Okay?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. The book's on Amazon. Okay,
perfect. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
The American Innovator has been brought to you by FastCap. To hear more, just go to theamericaninnovator.com.